Local station WLS broadcasts a radio host who repeatedly attacked a female student for no other reason than her participation in a public debate about women's health. She told elected officials about various ways her classmates rely on prescription birth control, including a story about a friend who takes it to manage ovarian cysts. For this, the radio host called her a slut, in addition to 45 other personal attacks.
Miss Fluke, have you ever heard of not having sex? She's having so much sex, it's amazing she can still walk. She's having so much sex, she's going broke buying contraceptives and wants us to buy them. It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex. If we are going to pay for your contraceptives and thus pay for you to have sex, we want you to post the videos online so we can all watch.
WLS shouldn't talk about women this way. Our community deserves better than this. This community service announcement was paid for by Media Matters for America.
Dire warning. High alert from the state of Utah. Numerous same-sex marriages are occurring every day in our state.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
On Friday afternoon, December 20th, Utah United States Federal District Court Judge Robert Shelby ruled that that state's ban on same-sex marriage was unconstitutional, a violation of the constitutional guarantee of equal protection. By the following Monday afternoon, many hundreds of gay couples had been lawfully wed in Salt Lake City. Utah rushed to ask Judge Shelby to stay, that is, to hold up implementation of his decision until the state's appeals could be decided. Judge Shelby said no. Equality had been denied long enough, and the Federal 10th Circuit Court of Appeals likewise refused to procrastinate on the guarantee of equality. So Utah has rushed to the Supreme Court, where presumably the stay also will be denied. The basis for Utah's appeal is, quote, numerous same-sex marriages are now occurring every day in Utah. Each one is an affront to the interests of the state and its citizens to be able to define marriage through ordinary democratic channels. Memo to Utah. A majority of the people should actually not have the power to vote to deny a minority their constitutionally guaranteed rights. That's why we call them rights.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
Packers.
Vikings. We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full. But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school. Families gain financial stability. The health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live United.
So give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. 31,000 Boeing workers represented by the International Association of Machinists District 751 are eligible to vote today in a contract extension proposal election ordered by IAM International. The highly profitable Boeing company wants to end defined benefit pensions for new hires and freeze the current pensions for IAM members. Boeing is also threatening to move production of the new 777X airplane out of Washington State if their contract extension offer is rejected. So traditional pensions and thousands of jobs could be on the line depending on the outcome of the vote. IAM International sent a letter signed by Union President Tom Buffenbarger to Boeing IAM members that said this offer adds $1 billion to the one rejected in November by District 751 members. Buffenbarger says it's a significant improvement worthy of the membership's consideration. IAM District 751 President Tom Robluski says because of massive takeaways, he's urging his members to reject Boeing's offer. Besides the pension concessions, those takeaways include higher out-of-pocket health care costs and raises totaling just 4% over 8 years. The United Auto Workers Retiree Medical Benefits Trust says its agreement with Fiat to buy out the UAW Trust ownership stake in Chrysler is in the best interests of the Trust's UAW Chrysler members and their families. The $4.3 billion Fiat is paying will go to fund Chrysler UAW retiree health care. The Union Trust, also known as the Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association, or VEBA, was created in 2007. It makes the Union Trust responsible for maintaining retiree health care and offloaded that responsibility from the Detroit 3 automakers. The trust owned 41.5% of Chrysler. Italian unions at Fiat, meanwhile, are concerned about the deal's impact on them. The CGIL Labor Federation in Italy says it's indispensable that Fiat clearly articulate what it intends to do now in Italy. The unions in Italy want Fiat and the government to make guarantees for Fiat's Italian workers in the wake of this deal. Nissan auto plants around the world are union plants, but not in Canton, Mississippi. A report by labor law professor Lance Campa says Nissan is violating international labor standards at that plant by interfering with worker rights to organize a union. Campa says Nissan uses anti-union intimidation, fear-mongering, and constant psychological pressure against workers in Mississippi. TV monitors throughout the plant run endless loops of anti-union propaganda, and management uses captive audience meetings and one-on-one sessions with workers to instill anti-union fear. Christopher Milton has worked for Nissan in Canton for 11 and a half years. He supports the United Auto Workers Union effort to organize workers in Mississippi.
Fear, intimidation, even racism is part of that plant every day, and we go through a lot of that. Put fear on the workers, we can control them, but they don't never give us a fair chance to say, why we need a union. We need a voice at this plant, and the intimidation and the fear, it really needs to stop.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Carl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
I'm Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow, and this is Take Action News. And I hope by all that is sacred and holy that you can hear me, because this is our shakedown broadcast. The announcement said that your host is Carl Frisch, but from now on, your host is me, Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow, host of Take Action News. This is our shakedown cruise, as we said. So we've got a great show for you today. But first of all, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we've got in mind here for Take Action News. There's been a lot of talk, especially around the Edward Snowden situation and Glenn Greenwald and who's a journalist and who isn't, what is and what isn't journalism nowadays. Well, to give you a clue where we're coming from on that, the name of this show is Take Action News. What does that mean? It means that we are, for lack of a better word, activist/journalists or journalists/activists. We believe, number one, that it's okay to have an opinion when you're reporting the news and interpreting the news. In fact, number two, we believe that everybody does have an opinion, and that whether it's the New York Times or the New York Post or Fox News or CNN, the people creating your news have an opinion. So the question is, what is that opinion? Are they open about it? Are they honest about it? Are they transparent? And most of all, do they get the facts right? So here at Take Action News, as we thank Carl Frisch for doing a terrific job as host, as we thank David Shuster before him for doing a terrific job at host, we promise you this: we will do our level best at all times, first and foremost, to get the facts right. We can say, like Fox News, we report, you decide. Actually, it's a little bit more like we report and we decide, but you can decide whether you agree with us or not. But if we ever get the facts wrong, I'll make you this promise. If we ever get the facts wrong, we'll tell you, we'll correct ourselves. If we ever get new information that changes our opinion, or if we ever hear an opinion that makes more sense than our own, we'll tell you that too. So we promise you transparency, we promise you honesty, and we promise you a lot of opinions, and we'll try our very best not to be boring while we do it. So those are our pledges to you, and we'll be talking more in the days and weeks to come about what our goals are for the show and how we intend to carry it out. But the couple things you should know right away, and you'll be hearing them from us over and over during the show. Number one is, as far as we're concerned, news is not a noun. News is a verb. News is something you do. We don't want to be passive consumers of the news. We don't want just to be entertained by the news. There's nothing wrong with being entertained, but we don't want 24-hour Octomom stories. We want news we can use. We want news we can act upon. We want news that empowers you to take action. Hence the name Take Action News. So you'll be hearing that a lot from us. You'll also hear quite a bit during our interviews. You'll hear us saying, what can we do about it? What can we do when we're interviewing somebody and they tell us that illegal foreclosures are still taking place, for example? If that's something we hear, we'll say, what can we do about it? So, because we want to do that. We want to empower on this show. Now, the big story, the big news story today, whether you're listening on Friday or on Saturday, the big story will still be the snowstorm. You may be one of the 100 million Americans who's been affected by this dramatic snowstorm. And if you are, we're going to make a guess right now that I'm pretty sure is right. You're counting on snowplows to get you out. If you're counting on snowplows to get you out, those snowplows are coming, in all probability, from your local government. See, one of the things we'll be saying here is that after 30 years of demonization of government, on everything from opinion reporting to even 60 Minutes. I wrote a piece myself about demonization of government in 60 Minutes news stories. Again, as we say, every news reporter has an opinion. We're just honest about ours. One of the things we're going to be telling you over and over is that whether you're snowbound or sick or jobless, government can be here to help. Government is a way that a society, a people, a nation comes together to help one another, and we don't think it should be stigmatized. We don't think it should be made into a dirty word. We think that Ronald Reagan was being cute, superficial, and shallow when he made fun of the words, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help." I'll tell you what, if you were standing on your house during Hurricane Katrina and the floodwaters were rising and that FEMA helicopter came for you, I'll tell you what, those were not cute words to you. Those were life-saving. So we're going to push back on the cuteness, the shallowness, the self-centered anti-government tirades being funded by billionaires, and we'll be talking about who those billionaires are, being funded by corporations. We'll be talking about who those corporations are, and we'll be telling you, per our own mandate, what you can do about it. Because we think a free and fair democracy depends, number one, on information, and number two, on a democratic process that is not polluted and controlled by big money. So where does that leave us for this week? We just had the end of one year and the beginning of another, an arbitrary distinction on the calendar, to be sure, but one that we make a great deal of. So in our year's wound-up stories, we heard a lot about Miley Cyrus twerking, for example. We didn't hear a lot about how Miley Cyrus twerking was a way to sell records, a reflection of a culture that's driven toward consumerism. So while, you know, she's got a right to do whatever she wants, and you can probably tell if you're watching the webcast, I'm old enough to remember when rock and roll was actually a symbol of rebellion, and by the way, was a musician myself, still am. You may be hearing some of our songs during the show further on down the road, but we also know that when Miley Cyrus went on the VMA Awards, to shock and surprise, she objectified women of color. That is not an appropriate way to move units, as they say in the rock and roll business. But we heard a lot of roundup stories like that about entertainment, and the news stories tended to focus on, was Obama having a good year, was Obama having a bad year, and so on. But underneath all of it, whether it's Miley Cyrus or whether it's Barack Obama's rollout of Obamacare, there are financial and economic forces at work here. And since my own background involves studying some of those economic, financial, sociological forces, whatever you want to call them, we'll be talking about that too. You know, my first show on We Act Radio was called The Breakdown, and we tried to look at the flow of these forces and how it drove the news stories we were seeing every week. We'll be doing a lot of that here too. So in our roundups, today we'll be talking, for example, about the Phil Robertson story, about the Duck Dynasty story. Why hasn't that story gone off the news? Well, we'll talk with Brian Grimm of the Huffington Post about that, but there are deeper and broader reasons for that as well. It's not just one moron with a TV show. There are economic and social forces at play here, political forces. We'll be talking about that. And we'll also be using this episode to shake out some of our technical problems. For example, I'm really hoping that my producers will be telling me shortly how much more time I have in this monologue, which gives me the perfect segue to introduce our team here at Take Action News. We have the executive producer is Melissa Byrne, who keeps us all in shape, including myself. The man running the helm. I have 30 more seconds. The man running the helm, the Mr. Sulu on the bridge of the starship Take Action News is Troy Miller, and the man running the engines below are is Pete Callahan. I just got a text message. Is Pete Callahan? He's our Scotty. So I don't think the dilithium crystals can take much more of that. We got about 3 more seconds to go. So we're going to take a break here and be right back with Take Action News. I'm RJ Eskow. Thanks for listening. Stick with us. We got a lot more ahead.
If you're planning to replace your Social Security card simply because you don't have it, you may not need to replace it at all. What's most important is that you remember your Social Security number. Remember during school how you memorized information and answers for tests? In the same way, you should memorize your Social Security number. Knowing your number is important, but having the card may not be. If you really do need to get a replacement card to show to an employer, it's easy to apply for a new one. Find out how at www.socialsecurity.gov/SS number.
Sergeant Michelle Garcia served meritoriously in Iraq and has the medals to prove it. Soon after leaving the Navy, Lieutenant Chris Scott found a job, a home, and started a family of his own. Corpsman Richard Stokely took the skills he learned in Vietnam and put them to good use as a paramedic. But soon after leaving the military, each of these veterans fell on hard times and faced homelessness. Even after Michelle lost all her savings, even after Chris wasn't able to pay his mortgage, and even after Richard battled alcoholism for years, they each reached out for help when they needed it most. A simple phone call put them in touch with a trained professional from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That call got Michelle a place to stay until she could afford one of her own, put Chris in touch with employment assistance, and found Richard a substance abuse program. These veterans are success stories not only for how they were able to help others while serving their country, but for how they were able to let others help them. If you know of or are a veteran in need, make the call.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Jane Kuger of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune into the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio.
Friends, David Shuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project, all provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast DC.
And if I am correct, then we are back on Take Action News. We promised you in our opening monologue on this, our first program as host of Take Action News, we promised you transparency, and we promised that we would share our opinions with you. Now, number one for transparency, our next guest is co-director of Social Security Works, which one is a wonderful organization, two I have a long association with, and three is the sponsor of Take Action News. So lest you think that in any way that represents a conflict of interest, I guess you could look at it that way, but I think of it very sincerely as a confluence of beliefs and opinions, which is why it's been a pleasure to work with them as an organization and with my next guest as an individual. Since I promised I'd share with you, be open about my personal opinions when reporting, I will also tell you that I consider Eric Kingson to be a wonderful human being. I love this man. I think he's done an enormous amount of good for society in his work as co-director of Social Security Works and his long history writing about social insurance in general and Social Security in particular, for the depth of his insight, for the warmth of his friendship, and for his leadership. I'm grateful to know him. So, and as the host of Take Action News, I certainly pray he's on the line with me right now. Eric, are you here?
I'm here, Richard, and thank you, and I think of you as a magnificent person and extraordinary voice in this effort.
Well, thank you so much. I think our audience has probably figured out by now this is not going to be a contentious interview, but I think it can be an interesting and important one, because as we get to the end of the year, I'm fascinated. You and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, but I did a year-end wrap-up on Social Security, and I'm very interested in your thoughts, because I thought 2013 did not go as I expected, but what did you think? What kind of year have we had? And then I'll ask you after that about the year we might be looking forward to, but what did you think happened with Social Security in 2013?
Well, all things considered, I think we got out of it very well, and thanks really to the efforts of many organizations, many people who wrote into their members of Congress, to the White House, and said, not only should you not cut my Social Security, but hey, folks, start thinking about expanding these benefits, because we're hurting outside of Washington. So I think at the beginning of the year, I would have thought that there was a very good chance we would come out of 2013 with a cut in Social Security, the change in the cost of living adjustment that had been proposed. We came out of 2013 without that cut and with a new sense of momentum where more members of Congress, congressional champions like Bernie Sanders, like Elizabeth Warren, Mark Begich, many others are now talking about expanding benefits and addressing a major retirement income crisis that Americans face.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because first of all, I was pessimistic going into 2013. I felt we would see what the cut you described, which is called the chain CPI, and that we would be subject to another year of relentless rhetoric about why this was just a modest adjustment, when you and I know it turns into a very substantial cut, that I really thought the forces were against us. You know, I've written at various points over the years about keeping our optimism, keeping our sense of faith in what's possible, but I must admit, looking back, I was a pessimist, and I've been pleasantly surprised, and perhaps the most The biggest surprise of all, although some of us have been arguing for strengthening Social Security and increasing its benefits, since they are actually low compared to those of other developed countries, and since there's a retirement crisis going on, I didn't realize the extent to which that would catch on in 2013, enough to provoke some ill-thought-out counter reactions from the anti-Social Security crowd, especially when Elizabeth Warren, who's become our leading progressive, signed on to the notion that we should increase Social Security. Now we're at this pivot point at the end of one year, the beginning of another. We're going into an election year, 2014. What do you think the Social Security battle will look like in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, first, I share with you, Richard, I'm delighted that the discussion has shifted away from how much should we cut Social Security. Until sometime around October or so this year, November, the discussion still had been, are we going to cut it a lot or are we going to decimate it? Now the discussion is, it's reframed to whether we should expand benefits. That is no longer an outlying position. It's a very realistic position. I also think it's reality-based. We have data telling us that 2/3 of working Americans, that's people who are not getting Social Security benefits, 2/3 of people who are working are not going to be able to maintain their standard of living because they've lost their pensions in many cases. Some have lost jobs, not have had good wage increases. Some have lost housing equity if they owned homes. Some even lost homes. So we know that moving forward in the next 20, 30 years, unless we do something, and especially in Social Security, we're going to have a major crisis on our hands. I think one of the things that's happened, Richard, is that the relentless march of this has begun to sink in. I think that the more, I'm going back to 2013, I think what was very effective in 2013 was getting the message out outside of Washington, getting the press began to turn around some on the Social Security issue. When we went into 2013, they were still talking about this so-called change CPI as a benefit adjustment, a tweak, a better way of measuring inflation. By the middle of the year or even earlier, it became clearer and clearer that this was a stealth cut and a very significant cut. And it was reported that way. And I think that helped. Over the summer, there was a lot of work to put expanding Social Security on the agenda. Going into 2014, I think we need to remain vigilant. Right now, that cut called the change CPI is off the table. Right now, the proposals that came out of the President's Deficit Commission to raise retirement age, to change the benefit formula in a way that would have decimated it for young people, that proposal hasn't been discussed seriously for the last year. But these things can reappear. We have a debt ceiling negotiation coming up. The change CPI could sneak into that. I don't think it will. It's an election year. I think more and more members of Congress have begun to catch on that this is a dangerous issue for them to favor cuts, and that some are beginning to realize it's popular and it makes sense to be talking about gradual expansion. So I think we may be at a turning point. We have Senator Harkin to thank for this, Senator Sherrod Brown, Linda Sanchez in the House, and many others who have put forward major significant increases in benefits. Sherrod Brown and Senator Harkin are proposing an $800 increase on average in benefits, and also a cost of living adjustment that would be fairer to people who receive benefits and would basically really keep them up to date. So I think we're going to see more discussion on this. And then I think there's something else, and you hint at this, you talk about this in your
Eric?
recent, yes?
I'm sorry, the something else is going to have to wait for your next visit because we only have about 30 seconds. But if you can give us in 10 seconds what the something else is, we'd love to hear it, and then we're going to
Absolutely. This is more than dollars and cents. It's a value issue, and the American public gets it in a way that Washington hasn't for a while. that we're not only struggling for Social Security, we're struggling for maintaining basic middle-class status for Americans and also for a decent society, for maintaining that social compact.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think that if people want to know more about your work, they can go to, is it socialsecurityworks.org?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Eric Kingson, thanks so much for being with us. Please keep up the wonderful work, and we'll be watching together to see what happens to Social Security.
Okay, and Happy New Year, RJ.
And same to you.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye.
You're listening to Take Action News on We Act Radio, produced at the studios of WPWC 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., your nation's capital.
I had a sore in my mouth that just wouldn't go away. And after a couple of weeks, I went to my doctor.
A sore, lump, or thick patch in your mouth or throat could be a symptom of oral cancer.
My doctor told me I was smart to come in. He said that oral cancer is more common in African American men than in any other group in the U.S. It turns out I did have oral cancer, but it was caught early and my treatment was successful. I'm glad I got it checked. That probably saved my life.
If you're an African American man, you need to know about oral cancer. Visit a doctor or dentist if you see changes in your mouth that don't go away after 2 weeks. It's important to get an oral cancer exam, because if you do have cancer, the earlier it's caught, the better. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institutes of Health.
Jeff, I'm home!
Hey, Mom.
So, what did you do today? I noticed the dishes are still in the sink.
I've been busy.
Getting your taxes done like we talked about?
Oh, I got my friend Dave on that. Hey, he's only charging $20.
Not Dave from your high school class who graduated 3 years late.
Yeah, he's good with numbers. Won our fantasy football league last year.
Jeff, I can't believe you would actually take your...
Kidding, Mom. I took all my paperwork over to that preparer just like you recommended.
Using a paid tax preparer this year? Visit irs.gov for some do's and don'ts. Like look for a preparer who has a preparer tax ID number and signs your return. Check out their qualifications and review your tax return before you sign it.
Oh, Jeff, why do you do this to me?
Mom, you're just so easy.
irs.gov. It's the best tax tip of all.
You know, this used to be a good neighborhood. Now it's a mess. You got all these polyps running around.
Colon cancer almost always starts with the polyp. Get the polyp early and stop colon cancer before it even starts.
Where do you think you were running to, huh?
I didn't even see you guys there. Get the test, get the polyp.
I want to talk to my lawyer!
Get the cure.
I got phone calls!
CD is for everybody, not just for the few. Anyone can share VD with someone nice as you.
If you're curious or confused, get information or a pamphlet at most pharmacies or a health clinic. If you need help, see a doctor.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
And we are back on Take Action News. This is Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow, and we are here reporting the news that we think you want to hear, and even if you don't, by God, you're going to hear it. Our next guest is a writer whose work I always appreciated and enjoyed, John Walker. John is here to talk to. John writes very well on health insurance, among other issues, but he's here today to talk to us about something a little different. He's here to talk to us about another area he follows closely, drug policy, and including the developments in Colorado. But anyway, John, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, well, welcome to Take Action News.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You bet. So, drug policy. I guess the big story right now is legal weed in Colorado. Is that right? Would you say that's the headline story?
Oh, yes, most definitely. This is the first time that you've been able to legally buy marijuana as any adult. You know, you don't need a medical marijuana card or anything. You can just walk into the store, pick up some marijuana, and walk out.
Now, who is selling it? I mean, we know that, so it's legal to both sell and to buy marijuana in the state of Colorado?
Yeah, under Colorado law, you, as a regular person, can buy up to an ounce of marijuana if you're over 21, and if you're especially licensed to grow and sell marijuana, you can do that.
So you can be a licensed dealer. What about like my 7-Eleven or the guy who runs the local service station? Can he, along with, you know, I mean, a lot of those guys sell zigzag papers in some states anyway, but can he sell, along with the cigarettes and the soda and Slurpees and all that, can they sell marijuana now?
No. The rules in Colorado are very strict. It's very tightly controlled. In these first few months, the only people who can sell marijuana are people who ran medical marijuana dispensaries before, that have transitioned into retail marijuana locations. But even after that initial time period is up, it will have to be a specially licensed marijuana store dedicated to selling marijuana. You won't see it in your grocery store or anywhere else.
Okay, so the analog really is, it's kind of like liquor stores.
Yeah, that was how the initiative was sold. It was regulate marijuana like alcohol. That was the name of the initiative, and that's very much what they're doing.
Okay, because I'm based most of the time in California, although I travel back east a lot to Washington and New York. But in California, as you know, they have the legal marijuana pharmacies, which are everywhere, and the definition of the pharmacy, gets stretched a lot. There are even, specialty restaurants included in one or two of the most upscale places, but you still need a prescription. So the difference really is that now in Colorado, anybody can walk into one of these licensed stores and buy marijuana. Now, it's gotten a lot of headlines without a lot of detail. That's one of the reasons why I've asked you a lot of the these backup questions, these background questions. Is there any word yet on how it's being received by the Colorado public? We know it passed. We know it received a majority vote. Are people accepting this fairly calmly, or just kind of going about their business? Is there any social group complaining that it's socially disruptive or immoral? Are there protests, or has it been a very smooth transition?
Yeah, so far it appears to have gone very smoothly. I think there's some recent polling in Colorado that found people's opinion about marijuana has basically been unchanged since last year when they voted for it. So, there hasn't really been an increase or decrease in support at all. And besides some long lines outside the stores, there hasn't seemed to be any, issues or problems that have emerged in these first 3 days.
So, okay, and then I guess the next question that would be reasonable to ask is, now you follow this area closely, would you consider the Colorado law to be something that could be used as a model for other states?
Oh yeah, no, they very much designed it with that goal in mind, the people who drafted it, and we're actually seeing all over the country very similar versions, or very similar laws to it, either being put on the ballot or being debated in the legislature. So I think, like in Alaska, most likely will be on the primary ballot is almost identical ballot measure, very similar to how Colorado's is designed. And I think some representatives in New Hampshire are putting almost an identical measure, before the legislature there this year. And yeah, it was always intended to be a model piece of legislation. Obviously, once we see what's happening in Colorado, they'll probably make some changes depending on what, how well things are going. But this is very likely what we'll see across the country.
So I guess then let's talk on the national level for a second. Then I guess, it's interesting because the gay marriage, I see analogies with the gay marriage battle in a sense, which is that also represented a kind of social change. That was also a struggle that was waged primarily at the state level. And what seemed to happen is that an idea that seemed socially unacceptable for decades, suddenly it was as if a dam had burst and state after state flipped, and suddenly it was socially acceptable where it hadn't been. Do you see something like that also happening with the marijuana legalization movement?
Oh yeah, and it's actually very fascinating. If you look at the polling of support for same-sex marriage and the polling of support for marijuana legalization, they've almost traveled in parallel for 20 years now. They've almost been identical in both, the overall level of support and, sort of the demographic groups that support them. It tends to be young, liberal people who are most supportive of both. And we have seen just an incredible tipping point in the polling for marijuana legalization. A good 8 years ago, it was only, or 10 years ago, it was only about 30% of the country supported legalization. Now it's well over a majority. And it seems to be growing by, 2, 3, 4 percentage points every year. We could easily be up to, 65% of the country supporting legalization within the next 5-6 years.
So what do you see in the minute or two we have left? I've got two topics. I'll give you a choice of which one to pick. One would be what the upcoming battleground states are, and two is David Brooks's a very hard to parse column of this weekend, where he basically said that he didn't think he smoked marijuana when he was young, but he didn't think it should be legal for reasons that weren't entirely clear to me. So I'd love to hear from you on either or both topics in the minute or two we have left.
Yeah, as best as I can tell from Brooks' column, he was sort of upset that legalization would send some moral message that people would be getting high instead of striving to go to the opera or something. I find it very disgusting, because if we really want to talk morality in the war on marijuana, we've got African Americans smoking at the same rates as white people, yet getting arrested 4 times more. We've got rank hypocrisy where the last 3 presidents, much of Congress, all did marijuana when they were younger. I doubt any of them would say that using marijuana was more damaging to them than being arrested for marijuana would have been. Here we've got President Obama supporting a system that probably would have kept him from being president if he was actually caught up in it. And then finally, the whole idea of just putting people in cages because they're smoking a harmless plant. It seems like one of the most immoral things I could think of. But, David Brooks wants us to pursue higher pursuits or something. So we got to waste a few $1 billion a year on a failed policy.
Well, John Walker, I think I don't think anybody could have put it better. I think that, first of all, in a nation that celebrates drinking, it's very hard to condemn marijuana smoking. I don't happen to do either anymore, but it's very hard for me to justify that point of view. And I certainly, in a nation, and if you're David Brooks, who talks about nothing except deficit reduction and reducing government spending week after week after week, why are we spending so much money incarcerating minority youth immorally, unethically, prejudicially, and for no constructive social reasons? So, John, thanks so much for being with us. I hope you'll come back sometime. I really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You bet. All right, this is Take Action News. We will be back after the break with more news you can take action on, hence the name. I'm Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow. Stick with us. We'll be back in a minute.
Say you want to go to college. A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East. Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not student number 95A-6273, report to. It's more like, hey John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
I had a sore in my mouth that just wouldn't go away.
Education beyond high school. A path to opportunity and success for our young people. The key to building a better life for themselves and ultimately their own children. But for many, all this is only a dream. Because the challenge of paying for education beyond high school seems to put this opportunity out of reach. But there is an organization that can help. Each year we award $80 billion in grants, low-interest loans, and work study to students in colleges, trade schools, and professional schools. We are federal student aid, part of the U.S. Department of Education. You can learn more by logging on to federalstudentaid.ed.gov. We may be able to help you realize your dreams, so don't get left behind. After all, the most costly education is the one not begun. Federal Student Aid. Start here, go further.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader in healthcare while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
When you go on a road trip, you're careful. You follow the signs to arrive at the right place. It's the same online. Read the internet signs along the way, or you may be led astray. For example, look for the .gov at the end of the web address. If it isn't .gov, it isn't the real Social Security website. People are often victimized by misleading advertisers who use terms like Social Security or Medicare to trick the public. These companies charge a fee for free Social Security services. These services include changing your name and getting a new Social Security card. There's no need to pay for services Social Security offers for free. Go to www.socialsecurity.gov. And remember, if it isn't .gov, it isn't Social Security.
And we are back on Take Action News. News you can use, news that can change the world if you let it and if you help it. Our next guest is Jessica Pieklo. Jessica writes for RH Reality Check, and she is going to talk to us about the latest and sort of tricky developments in the contraception battle and the larger war on women. Jessica, are you with us?
I sure am. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. So the latest development now is that a religious group has gone to the Supreme Court to ask for a stay. Can you tell us just briefly what that story is?
Sure. So January 1st, much of the Affordable Care Act went into effect. Along that is the employer birth control benefit portion of it. And there's already been a lot of activity around this with for-profit corporations suing to try and opt out of it. Certain other groups have also sued, and among them are religious nonprofits. So the law does not require houses of worship or churches, for example, to provide contraception at no additional cost to their employees. And the Obama administration offered a broader, bigger exemption that said if you are a religious nonprofit, you can certify that, and we will allow you to opt out of providing that contraception directly, and instead provide a third-party avenue to make that contraception available to your employees. Well, religious nonprofits were not happy even with that accommodation and have sued, and there's a variety of cases working their way through the appellate courts. On New Year's Eve, right before the law was about to take effect, one of those groups, a group of nuns who operate assisted living facilities and a couple other types of organizations, filed an emergency petition with the Supreme Court asking them to put the requirement on hold. Justice Sotomayor granted that request on New Year's Eve and gave the Obama administration until today to respond. The Obama administration has, and right now we're waiting to see what, if any, Supreme action the Supreme Court will take beyond the very narrow, limited stay for the nuns that they issued on New Year's Eve.
Okay, this is one of the reasons why I was really looking forward to having you straighten us out on this issue, Jessica, is that at first glance, the stories appeared as if were written as if the nuns were only objecting to the paperwork they had to file. In other words, they were objecting to their own ability to opt out of this requirement. But as one digs deeper, it sounds like what they're really trying to do, but correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like what they're really trying to do is close off the ability for their employees to obtain contraception coverage from other sources. Is that the net effect of what's...
Correct. I think that that's a pretty fair assessment here. So the nuns group and group of plaintiffs have, as you said, challenged this self-certification process. And they have said that the process of self-certifying violates their religious liberties because it forces them to participate in a system that they disagree with fundamentally. And that system is even making access to contraception available to their employees. So it's not so much about their individual right to exercise religion as they see fit, i.e. to purchase and use or not purchase and not use contraception in line with whatever faith belief they have, but in reality affirmatively deny their employees access to a benefit that the law says they are entitled to have.
Right, and that's, so it seems to me that this is, one, it's activism. Two, it means, where does this end? I mean, if you take their argument to a logical extreme, this is a country of diversity, a diversity of religious beliefs. There are probably 10 active religions in this country with more than 500,000 followers. Does that mean that if I work for a Buddhist organization, they may be able to cut off certain elements of my health plan? Do I need to investigate the religious beliefs of my future employer before joining to know what will and won't be covered? And where does one get the constitutional principle? I thought it worked the way Will Rogers said that your freedom to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. And where does one's constitutional right begin to impinge on another's?
Well, and these are all very important questions to be asking. I mean, the Supreme Court has answered some of these in earlier decisions. For example, we have a broad ministerial exception that says if you are a minister or a place of worship, you do not have to abide by certain anti-discrimination laws if it genuinely impinges on your faith. And that is a very narrow ruling, and it makes sense when we think of the concept in terms of our historical approach to the separation of church and state. But what we're seeing take place with the birth control benefit is conservatives see a wedge, and they see an opportunity to expand this First Amendment protection and blow it out beyond all recognition, and raises all of these very important questions that you raised. Which is, where is the limit to this? It is one thing to say, if you are a minister in a house of faith, you do not have to provide this benefit to your employees because it impinges on your religious faith. The Obama administration already routinely acknowledged that and bent over backwards to make sure that the law did as well. What we're seeing now are these, religious nonprofits that operate universities, that operate hospitals, that operate assisted living facilities, that employ thousands of people of all denominations. And, in the case of Hobby Lobby, we're seeing for-profit secular companies that are trying to take on, for purposes of avoiding a federal tax penalty, providing employment benefits. So I think that we do have to be very precise about this, because there's a lot of cynicism driving this activism from the right, and we are in danger of the federal courts falling for it.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I guess I would ask you, because we're Take Action News, what can a person do about this? If I'm outraged, which, by the way, I am, at this impingement, I mean, I don't support what the NSA is doing. I'd love to be able to be exempted from my obligation to pay taxes to fund it. But I'm told that's not how the system works. So I'm outraged at this. What can a person do if they want to push back? Clearly the court system is not the electoral system. We're not dealing with elected officials. Are there organizations people can support? Are there letters people can write? What can people do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I think if, as an individual, we can put pressure on our employees to make, or on our employers to make sure that they are complying with the mandate in this particular case. If I was an employee that worked at a place like Hobby Lobby, for example, or a variety of the other Eden Foods, any of these other organizations that have put forward legal challenges, I would want an explanation for that, and I would want clear disclosure of that. I don't know that corporations have always been totally clear with their employees on their position and what's going on. So I think that's a very fundamental grassroots individual step that can take. And then you bring up a very good point, which is to what degree is there accountability within our federal court system? Petitioning a federal district court judge isn't going to get us very far in terms of having the law applied and interpreted in the way that serves its intended purpose, in this case, providing as much coverage as possible. But I do think continuing to put the pressure on elected officials to let them know that the issue is not about religious liberty. This is about equality in employment benefits. We are talking about non-discrimination in the delivery of insurance coverage, and conservatives are using that as cover and bring up those very important points. And I think that many lawmakers get that there's just a fear or a reluctance to, particularly in the current climate, look like they are not on the side of religious freedom. And I think that it is entirely possible to be on the side of religious freedom and employment equality.
Well, and a last question about religious freedom, I guess, and it's a leading question. We're told this is not about a war on women, this is about religious freedom. Have any of these, Catholic and other groups are also against, or I should say very conservative Catholic groups, and others are also against sex that is not for the purposes of reproduction. Viagra is generally prescribed to men who are beyond the age of reproduction. Have any Catholic groups sued not to have to provide Viagra or other services to aging males? Or is this just about women?
No, this is in there, and it's just about female-driven contraception, and it is and even within that, the conversations and the lawsuits have been very loaded because many of the organizations are objecting to providing coverage for what they call abortifacients, which is contraception. So there's a whole fight here within right. What is contraception.
I apologize. We have to leave it there. We could talk much longer about it, but Jessica, thanks so much for being with us, and thanks for staying on top of this very important story.
Thank you so much for having me on. Talk to you guys anytime.
We'll be right back.
I'm Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico. Last year, my state became the 12th state to allow medical use of marijuana by patients who are seriously ill. Some people were surprised that a Republican governor supports medical marijuana, but I'm hardly alone. Groups like the American College of Physicians, American Nurses Association, and American Public Health Association have all acknowledged the medical value of marijuana. New research about medical marijuana is coming out almost every day, showing remarkable potential in all sorts of serious conditions, including cancer, AIDS, and chronic pain. But some in government still want to put politics and ideology ahead of public health. To learn more about medical marijuana and what you can do to help, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thanks.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM, broadcasting live from Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue in D.C.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. 31,000 Boeing workers represented by the International Association of Machinists District 751 are eligible to vote today in a contract extension proposal election ordered by IAM International. The highly profitable Boeing company wants to end defined benefit pensions for new hires and freeze the current pensions for IAM members. Boeing is also threatening to move production of the new 777X airplane out of Washington State if their contract extension offer is rejected. So traditional pensions and thousands of jobs could be on the line depending on the outcome of the vote. IAM International sent a letter signed by Union President Tom Buffenbarger to Boeing IAM members that said this offer adds $1 billion to the one rejected in November by District 751 members. Buffenbarger says it's a significant improvement worthy of the membership's consideration. IAM District 751 President Tom Robluski says because of massive takeaways, he's urging his members to reject Boeing's offer. Besides the pension concessions, those takeaways include higher out-of-pocket health care costs and raises totaling just 4% over 8 years. The United Auto Workers Retiree Medical Benefits Trust says its agreement with Fiat to buy out the UAW Trust ownership stake in Chrysler is in the best interests of the Trust's UAW Chrysler members and their families. The $4.3 billion Fiat is paying will go to fund Chrysler UAW retiree health care. The Union Trust, also known as the Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association, or VEBA, was created in 2007. It makes the Union Trust responsible for maintaining retiree health care and offloaded that responsibility from the Detroit 3 automakers. The trust owned 41.5% of Chrysler. Italian unions at Fiat, meanwhile, are concerned about the deal's impact on them. The CGIL Labor Federation in Italy says it's indispensable that Fiat clearly articulate what it intends to do now in Italy. The unions in Italy want Fiat and the government to make guarantees for Fiat's Italian workers in the wake of this deal. Nissan auto plants around the world are union plants, but not in Canton, Mississippi. A report by labor law professor Lance Campa says Nissan is violating international labor standards at that plant by interfering with worker rights to organize a union. Campa says Nissan uses anti-union intimidation, fear-mongering, and constant psychological pressure against workers in Mississippi. TV monitors throughout the plant run endless loops of anti-union propaganda, and management uses captive audience meetings and one-on-one sessions with workers to instill anti-union fear. Christopher Milton has worked for Nissan in Canton for 11 and a half years. He supports the United Auto Workers Union effort to organize workers in Mississippi.
Fear, intimidation, even racism is part of that plan every day, and we go through a lot of that. Put fear on the workers, we can control them, but they don't never give us a fair chance to say, why we need a union. We need a voice at this plant. And the intimidation and the fear, it really needs to stop.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Over 13 million people are affected by famine, war, and drought in the Horn of Africa. Unfortunately, just listening to this commercial won't help them. Just listening won't give them their next meal, or shelter, or hope. You can help by texting GIVE to 777-444 to donate $10, and by going to usaid.gov/FWD to forward the facts. Brought to you by the Ad Council and USAID. Text donations go directly to Consortium of Humanitarian Relief Organizations. Standard text and data rates apply.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
Let me tell you who to blame. Blame the boy lying at your feet, his body oozing life through the hole in his stomach where the bullet tore him apart. Blame him for challenging you, for not looking away and for not backing down when you pulled out the gun. Blame your mother for bringing you into this world when she was but a kid herself, and for dragging you up, not bringing you up. Blame society for not giving you hope. Blame your father for not being there, the man who looked after himself instead of looking after you. Blame the gun in your hand for making you a target, for making you more likely to be picked on. Blame the dead boy, blame your mother, blame society, blame your father, blame the gun, blame anyone but yourself for not being strong enough to put down the gun, to break the cycle.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Carl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
This is Richard Eskow, and we are back on Take Action News. And I have a slight technical problem with my headset here, but I am going to pray that it resolves itself and that you can hear me okay. Nothing works perfectly in this world. And my next guest is with the Granite State Progress Organization. We're going to be talking about the struggle to take back state houses. We don't quite have her yet, though. Okay, we promised you at the beginning of this show that there would be a technical glitch or two, and that first hour just went way too smoothly. So what we're doing is generating them for you now, but we are done. That was purely for symbolic purposes, and we now have Zandra Rice with us. She is the executive director of the Granite State Network, and she is involved. You know, we talk a lot about politics on the national level. We talk a lot less about what's going on the state level, and I think that's a mistaken focus. So Zandra, are you with us? So we may not have Zandra. We are redialing Zandra. Okay, well, you know, this is the excitement of live radio, and this is what we're here to share with you. But as I was saying a minute ago, you know, everybody's talking about, will Hillary run in 2016? Everybody's talking about personality issues. Everybody's talking about, you know, the national, and these are, don't get me wrong, these are important debates, these are important arguments, but what happens at the state houses and at the state level decides our future just as much as these battles do, which is why it's my great pleasure to introduce Zandra Rice of the Granite State Network again. Zandra, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yep, Zandra. You got it.
All right. Now, tell us for a second about what you do at the Granite State Network, if you would.
Sure. It is actually Granite State Progress, and Granite State Progress is a multi-issue advocacy organization, and we work primarily on issues of immediate state or local concern. So our job is to help support other progressive allies in the community on their campaigns, but also be a consistent presence to push back on conservative propaganda or to pick up the ball when, say, an issue comes up that there's not an identifiable group to work on it. We step in and make sure that there's progressive solutions to critical community problems.
Now, do you work with that mostly in communicating with the general public or with legislators or with candidates or all of the above?
All of the above. So we work a lot to do public education and communications to the general public, but we have a particular track record around following and monitoring candidates and elected officials and sharing that information back with their constituents and voters. In particular, at the New Hampshire State House, Granite State Progress leads a vote report card project. And for those who don't know, New Hampshire has 400 state representatives plus 24 state senators. So for the average constituent to know what their legislator is doing and really understand their votes on the issues that matter to them, Granite State Progress breaks over 200 votes down each session into layman's terms and gives constituents a printout of how their individual legislators voted.
Now, to put that in context for people who are listening, New Hampshire is not a large state, so to have a legislature that's that large means that you really, the ratio of a representative, a legislator, to the average citizen, there are much more of them. It's as if each legislator is representing almost a neighborhood. Is that fair to say, as opposed to, you know, a large, for example, right now I'm sitting in California where my legislator probably represents 750,000 people, where you are, the legislator probably represents, what, a few thousand?
Yep, exactly, a few thousand, and it's not unusual for a single member of the community to have 5 to 8 legislators at the State House who represent them. So,
really?
You know, yeah, so when you think about how difficult it is for the average voter just to know how one elected official is doing or doing on their behalf each day at the State House, imagine trying to track 5 to 8.
Now, here's why, one of the reasons why I think your work is important, but you can tell me. You know, one of the things that I follow very closely is polling data. And the polling, New Hampshire is generally thought of as a conservative or a right-leaning state. But polling data consistently shows that on a number of issues, especially social and economic issues, even self-described conservatives, registered Republicans, even self-described Tea Party members are often surprisingly progressive on specific issues. For example, on the national level, 75% of registered Republicans in one poll and 76% of self-described Tea Party members thought that Social Security benefits should not be cut to reduce the deficit. So there are many ways, Wall Street, taxation, and so on, where relatively, you know, self-described conservative voters and registered Republicans are better on the issues than people think. So I would think that your work and letting them know how their legislators are voting and giving them a chance to push back is effective. Could you tell us maybe what 2 or 3 of your biggest successes so far have been?
Yeah, certainly. So for those who had followed some of the work around ALEC Exposed in particular, a really exciting thing that happened here in New Hampshire this past year is that we had a really bad bill come through that the American Legislative Exchange Council has been supporting policies like this, and it's to eliminate paper paychecks and move people over to fee-laden payroll cards for their salary if they don't have direct deposit. And this is an issue that we found bipartisan support to defeat here because people cared very deeply about workers in our state, but also just in making sure that we weren't jeopardizing the rights and the ability of individuals, particularly in really small rural communities where it's not unusual for people to still not use electronic banking services, for example. So that's an exciting piece. It's also really important to know about New Hampshire's kind of political makeup on some of the issues that you cited in terms of the polling data. New Hampshire is also very strongly a pro-choice and pro-equality state. So we passed marriage equality here in the state where, you know, a lot of people probably wouldn't have expected that. But we had overwhelming support, and in fact, during the last legislative session, 2011-2012, we had super conservative supermajorities in both the state house and the state senate, and despite that, beat back some really aggressive attacks on women's health, attempts to repeal marriage equality in the state, and attempts to institute right to work for less.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned two issues. You mentioned the ALEC group, American Legislative Exchange Council, which people may, or it's not Exchange Council, but which people may remember from the fact it's been written up, the large funding it's received from the Koch brothers and from many major corporations, some of whom have dropped out under pressure. But this is where, you know, they used to say in the old days, think globally, act locally. Here, this is a corporate group which in your state was trying to force people to use corporate resources, namely electronic banking and the banking system, even if they didn't want to. You fought back and succeeded. So if people, very briefly as we wrap up, if people want to support your organization or learn more about it, where can they go?
They can go www.granitestateprogress.org. You can see a ton of the issues we've been working on and some of the exciting projects we have coming up.
That's great. Zandra Rice, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Children are exposed to violence every day, in their neighborhoods, in their schools, even in their own homes. Exposure to violence can have a devastating and lifelong impact. Through community action and leadership at the national level, we're identifying the children who need our help. I'm Attorney General Eric Holder, and I'm asking those of you who have a role in a child's life to take action. Through your attention and early intervention, we can help children in need to heal, to thrive. Together, we can change their lives and their futures.
Join the Justice Department in defending childhood.
100% success rate in notifying free consultations at 10%.
Does this sound familiar? If you're in need of assistance with your mortgage, be careful where you turn for help. Loan modification scammers will offer deals too good to be true. Learn the signs so your life won't be turned upside down. Know it, avoid it, report it. For more information or to report a scam, call 1-888-9950 or visit hud.gov/preventloanscams.
As a National Guard or Reserve member, you served your country. Now let VA serve you.
I wouldn't be here today as a successful woman without the help that I received.
Your VA honors your service by providing a wide range of veterans benefits. From home loans to job training, VA benefits can help with some of life's toughest challenges.
What's important about VA benefits is they don't just touch you as an individual. They can touch your parents, maybe your grandparents, your child.
Go to benefits.va.gov/Guard Reserve to learn more, including how to apply online using e-benefits.
I just finished a master's degree recently, and now I'm working on another degree as well. So the military made that all possible. My veterans benefits made that all possible.
No matter what the time is, apply for your benefits. You earn them. VA is ready to help you.
Achieve your next mission. Learn about and apply for your VA benefits today.
Friends, David Shuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast DC. We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe Treatment Advocacy Resources Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
And we are back on Take Action News. This is Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow, your new host of this program. And we will be talking in a moment with Neil Sroka. Neil is the Communication Director of Democracy for America, excuse me, which some of you may know as Howard Dean's organization. It was originally founded by Dr. Dean in order to recruit progressive candidates at all levels of government, and in keeping with our theme for this half of the hour of concentrating on change at the state as well as national level, we wanted to talk to Neil a little bit about that battle. Neil, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, RJ. Great to be with you.
Well, thanks for coming on. Let's talk a little bit about how it's looking at the state level. We got an election coming up. It's an election year congressionally, but how are those legislatures and state houses looking for 2014?
Well, you know, listen, I think that we have a tremendous opportunity as progressives to really take back power in a critical way. I think far too many of us really kind of learned in the worst way possible following the 2010 election what it means to lose state houses across the country and also gubernatorial races across the country. You know, for a lot of us, there was this realization when Scott Walker tried to take away the rights of unions in Wisconsin and the rights of workers to organize that, holy cow, there's a tremendous amount of power at the state level, and you know what state legislators do and do not do can really destroy the very fabric of our society and really hurt directly working families everywhere. And so, Democracy for America, as you so eloquently put, we were founded after the 2004 election to help elect progressive candidates across the country. We like to say from dog catcher to president. But in reality, that means that we all levels of government, we support candidates and through from hearing from our members who they like and provide material support as well as training support to these candidates. And in 2013, we, relaunched, as a part of that effort, what we called our Purple Blue Project, which was an effort to take back state houses across the country, particularly states that were purple, and make them decisively Democratic. And so we started that program in Virginia this past year, which had its election, as we all know, in the fall of 2013. We supported well over a dozen candidates, 5 major candidate supports. We won one of those races and then got extremely close in a number of the other races that we endorsed in. And, part of supporting progressive candidates means getting in early and getting in deep with a lot of these candidates, knowing that sometimes progressives don't always win their first election. It takes a lot of time, talent, and resources and experience, honestly, to win elections. And even in cases where we don't win on the first election, that lays the groundwork for amazing, follow-up candidacies. And that's why, for instance, Democracy for America got behind Annie Kuster, a candidate that ran for Congress in 2010. She lost in 2010, but she laid the great groundwork for a second campaign and won in 2012. And we have tons of examples where people don't win the first time around, but will win the second time around. And so, go ahead.
No, I think that's a great point, and I was just going to ask you, what do you see as the battleground states? I know you focus all around the country. Are there any states you're particularly concentrating on, or you think are in play in 2014?
Well, I think that's a great question. Montana is going to be a huge opportunity, I think, for progressives. That's a state where, thanks to really strong campaign finance laws, there are real restrictions on how much big money corporations can dump in to races, and that gives a lot of power to organizations like Democracy for America, which organize our members. We have about 1 million members across the country to donate directly to candidates themselves. So those individuals, because they believe in what these candidates are kind of providing or talking about, can contribute at a $25, $30 level. And that can really fight back against, corporations, which in Montana can only, I think, give a few $100s. So Montana is going to be a place where we're really excited about going. And we're already looking at, in 2015, looking forward to going back to Virginia, where there is that's going to be the real fight, whereas in this time around we were fighting for the State House, which Republicans control a lot more of. The state Senate in Virginia is tied, and right now, fortunately, Democrats won a number of constitutional offices, so we kind of have a very bare majority with the election of the Attorney General or the governor there, and that will allow us to basically what we're hoping for is in 2015, Democrats can retake the Senate, which would really kind of flip and remind folks again that Virginia isn't this red state anymore. It's purple and slowly turning, decisively Democratic. So Virginia in 2015 and in 2014 look to Montana. Iowa.
I think that's a great point, and I by the way, I think it was just a Freudian slip when you said Attorney General, because you were probably thinking of Ken Cuccinelli, the Republican Attorney General and gubernatorial candidate. I think Terry McAuliffe's campaign slogan was, "At least I'm not Cuccinelli." But listen, Neil, if people want to know more about your work and how to support it, where should they go online?
Yeah, go to democracyforamerica.com. That's all one word. Democracyforamerica.com. You can learn about our Purple Blue Project, as well as find out about, there's a really easy way to search for candidates in your area. The great thing about DFA's million members is that we, our members are active in races all across the country. So no matter where you are, you'll be able to find a candidate that is vying for the DFA endorsement. And you can take a look at them and really make sure that they're reflecting your values and help them secure a DFA endorsement.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us, Neil. Democracy for America, keep up the great work, and thanks for joining us on Take Action News. And
great. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
You bet. And we will be right back after this break. Thanks for being with us. Stick with us.
listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
If you're planning to replace your Social Security card simply because you don't have it, you may not need to replace it at all. What's most important is that you remember your Social Security number. Remember during school how you memorized information and answers for tests? In the same way, you should memorize your Social Security number. Knowing your number is important, but having the card may not be. If you really do need to get a replacement card to show to an employer, it's easy to apply for a new one. Find out how at www.socialsecurity.gov/SS number.
Say you want to go to college. Yay! A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East. Go Red Wolves! Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
Hello, my name is Jim Gray, and I am a judge of the Superior Court in California and a former federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. I would like to talk to you for a moment about marijuana. Did you know that since the federal government first banned marijuana in 1937, usage in this country has actually gone up by about 4,000%? Or did you know that in the Netherlands, where adults are allowed to possess small amounts of marijuana and buy it from government-regulated businesses, fewer adults and fewer teenagers smoke marijuana than here in our country? Or that an American is arrested on marijuana charges every 38 seconds? If you are wondering if any of this makes sense, you are not alone. To find out more, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thank you, and good luck to us all.
And we are back on Take Action News. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next guest. Sally Cohen is a commentator, a writer, and Sally, I say this as the highest form of praise in our line of work, a polemicist of the first order. So, Sally, at last we meet. I've been reading you for a long time. It's great to finally connect with you. Thanks for coming on Take Action News.
It's a real pleasure to be on with you.
Well, Sally, for New Year's Day, you wrote a piece that I found fascinating. That was, obviously everyone now is doing their wrap-ups of 2013 and 2014, and there's been a lot of discussion about what a great year 2013 was for LGBT rights, and in many ways, of course, it was. But you had a fascinating alternate take on it, and in a second I'll tell you how I had an opinion that was paralleling it some way. And you wrote, among other things, perhaps the most interesting question at this juncture is whether the attainment of heteronormative rights leads to homo liberation and social justice more broadly. Could you tell us a little bit about your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I sort of try to be very careful in the piece to be clear that I am, as overjoyed as everyone else about the incredible leaps forward that were made in marriage equality, allowing gays to serve openly in the military, all the things that were achieved this year, as well as, and I think this is probably the most important, the seismic changes in positive shifts that continue in public opinion much more broadly. All that's good. The question that I think, it actually was a more vibrant question 10, even 20 years ago, before the sort of advent of the gay marriage push, was this question about whither go the gay rights movement. Do we push for, quote-unquote gay rights in the same kind of model and vein of civil rights and sort of, the tradition of civil rights struggles before, and head down that road, or is there a more radical liberationist agenda, which is, and there's lots of ways to try and explain what that distinction would be, but for me, I imagine it as, are you kind of taking the existing structures, rights, and privileges of society and kind of shoehorning gay people as the latest group to ascend to the sort of vaulted rights status and shoehorning them into those structures, or are you trying to upend, alter, reimagine those structures in ways that are fundamentally more equitable, not only for gay people, but for everyone else, who also needs to be included and recognized and valued in our society?
Well, and I thought that was such a wonderful question and challenge to pose, and as all writing that excites me does, not all writing, but much of the writing, it crystallized thoughts that have been sort of percolating in the back of my mind, which is, look, I belong to the group that's had the right, for example, to marriage for a long time, and I've exercised it twice so far, and now for the last time, but I also, and I'm happily married, but
Don't
I
see yourself now, come on.
Pardon me?
Don't pinch yourself.
Yes, but look, I also recognize that on a broader level, especially in the last 30, 40 years, marriage has become a kind of economic device that's been used to perpetuate inequality. The two-parent trap, as Elizabeth Warren called it, the fact that it's increasingly difficult for one person to survive, much less raise a family on their own. So bringing gay people into that, yes, it's a wonderful breakthrough for civil rights, but your piece highlights the fundamental social issues which gay people and all people are struggling with, and you mentioned the military also, and full rights to military service doesn't change, the misplaced role that the military has within our societies. At certain points, while I've been joyous about the victories for gay people and their rights, sometimes the old Alice Cooper line, "Welcome to my nightmare," has come to mind. So I guess the question is, what do we do with this, what you've articulated, which is on the one hand the sense of rightful celebration, but the sense that there are more fundamental issues at play too. How do we articulate, for example, a civil rights movement for LGBT people that is also a model for a more just and humane society?
Well, it was a great set of questions, and I think, I'm going to sort of focus my answer in on marriage because it is sort of issue du jour, and it's sort of the centerpiece of your question, and it's a good way to kind of elucidate some of these distinctions. But it's really only sort of one proxy example for a larger sort of questioning, pondering, reimagining this sort of rights versus liberation struggle, right? And sort of that central question being, are you requiring, implicitly or explicitly, gay people to, in effect, behave like straight people in order to have access to certain rights? Or the sort of the other end of the pendulum is, are you in achieving justice, equality, social transformation, etc., are you making it possible not only, this is the key thing, not only for gay people to be themselves, be accepted, be celebrated, be welcome as themselves, but in fact sort of unshackling straight people as well from some of the expectations, outmoded norms, and strictures and structures of heteronormativity, right? I mean, in other words,
right.
The liberation movement, as you imagine it, it's not just for gay people, right? It's for everyone. And marriage is a great example of this. Once upon a time, this is maybe 30 years ago, the Canadian government was sort of challenged with this question way before we were in the United States of what are we going to do about all these gay couples who are asking for marriage equality, and the government kind of sent off a little group and said, go figure this problem out. The commission comes back and they say, well, actually, the best thing we could do would be get rid of civil marriage. That the problem we have now as a country, they said up in Canada, is that we are recognizing and sort of conferring benefits on families based on form as opposed to function. So if the government is going to give Social Security benefits to my parents, whichever survives one or the other, my heterosexual parents who are married, why should the government care if I give those benefits, it's the same amount of money, confer those benefits on my same-sex partner, whether he's married or not, or my best friend, or, the guy I like down the street. I mean, who cares if that's in effect my sort of portion of the public purse that I get to confer based on, whatever kind of relationship and family and support system I set up. Now, that was 20, 30 years ago. Now, in the United States, 4 out of 5 families no longer fit the, mom, dad, kids, heteronormative picket fence norm that we've designed government policy for. I'm not saying do away with religious marriage. I'm not saying do away with all of the special ceremony, meaning, religious and otherwise, that we confer on marriage. But, this idea, which would open up all kinds of benefits and rights and privileges to all kinds of family forms and functions, not only does it actually make sense for modern families, but incidentally, it's supported by everyone from Rand Paul to Glenn Beck to me.
Well, Sally,
the government should get out of that business.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut in. I love where you're going with this. I hope you'll come back because I think we could have a fantastic whole other segment about this. But for now, unfortunately, you're a broadcaster. I'm up against the reality of hard stops. So thanks so much for being on, and I hope you'll come back. Sally Cohn.
Such a pleasure. Have a good day.
You too. This is Richard Eskow. We'll be right back on Take Action News.
Education beyond high school, a path to opportunity and success for our young people, and the key to building a better life for themselves and ultimately their own children. But for many, all this is only a dream, because the challenge of paying for education beyond high school seems to put this opportunity out of reach. But there is an organization that can help. Each year we award $80 billion in grants, low-interest loans, and work-study to students in colleges, trade schools, and professional schools. We are federal student aid, part of the U.S. Department of Education. You can learn more by logging on to federalstudentaid.ed.gov. We may be able to help you realize your dreams, so don't get left behind. After all, the most costly education is the one not begun. Federal Student Aid. Start here, go further.
Hey, Mom.
So, what did you do today? I noticed the dishes are still in the sink.
I've been busy.
Getting your taxes done like we talked about?
Oh, I got my friend Dave on that. Hey, he's only charging $20.
Not Dave from your high school class who graduated 3 years late.
Yeah, he's good with numbers. Won our fantasy football league last year.
Jeff! I can't believe you would actually take your...
Kidding, Mom. I took all my paperwork over to that preparer just like you recommended.
Using a paid tax preparer this year? Visit irs.gov for some do's and don'ts. Like, look for a preparer who has a preparer tax ID number and signs your return. Check out their qualifications and review your tax return before you sign it.
Oh, Jeff, why do you do this to me?
Mom, you're just so easy.
irs.gov. It's the best tax tip of all.
Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Marins, and I'm here to talk to you about Take Action News with David Shuster. Every week we talk politics, government, and what you can do to take action. David Shuster talks with today's leading political minds.
Valerie, so many people will know your name, know your story because of those dastardly actions by the Bush administration to try to discredit your husband, who called them out for their lies that led up to the Iraq War. And in so going after him, they leaked your name. 10 years since the start of the Iraq War. Has your perspective on any of this changed? Do you still carry around any sort of anger or frustration to the Bush administration? How have you been dealing with it all these years?
Until the right is able to come to terms with the reality that we were lied into this war and it was not a good idea and it wasn't to liberate the Iraqi people, they will just continue to live in, la-la land and perpetuate the lies that got us into the war in the first place.
Tune in from noon to 3 p.m. every Saturday, right here on We Act Radio.
When our daughter Ava was 4, we noticed she didn't talk much. A genetic test revealed that she had hearing loss caused by 2 mutated genes. One she inherited from myself, the other from her dad. If it weren't for the amazing people at U of M, we might have never known the true cause of Ava's hearing loss or how to properly treat it.
The University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is one of only a handful of hospitals in the world researching genetic hearing loss in addition to treating it. Our breakthrough research and advanced treatments combined with outstanding care help us change children's lives in extraordinary ways. For the latest and best in pediatric care, call a Mott Patient Advisor at 877-475-MOTT or visit mottchildren.org.
She is more talkative now and more social. She loves music now. She's humming to the music, and it's sweet to actually hear her humming.
To learn more, call 877-475-MOTT.
They not only helped us find answers, they helped Ava find her voice.
That's the Michigan difference.
I'm going to guess we're back on Take Action News. This is RJ Eskow. Thanks for sticking with us. Our next guest is Dan Cantor of the Working Families Party in New York, which has been doing great things this year. Dan, are you with us?
I am. Yes, I am.
Thanks for coming on Take Action News. Listen, Dan, first of all, congratulations on your successes with the Working Families Party in 2013. I guess the one that people know the most about is that Working Families Party has been closely involved in the career of the new New York Mayor, Bill de Blasio, and his election this last year, which was a watershed moment for the progressive movement. So congratulations. You want to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the election of Bill de Blasio?
Sure. Thanks for having me. There's been much remarked on all over the country that there's something in the air now, and maybe the rightward drift of the country is starting to be reversed. And nowhere is that as true as New York. But it's true in other places as well. The results, out of Minnesota and out of Pittsburgh and out of California and Seattle and so on, it's not just New York. So I don't think we should assume that this is something that can only happen here, because it's definitely happening elsewhere. That said, the election of Bill de Blasio as mayor and Letitia James as public advocate and Scott Stringer as our comptroller and an amazing crew of new and returning city council members is an exciting moment for us. A progressive wave really did sweep over the city. And partly it's the result of kind of the long haul of community organizers and others doing work for the last decade, but it's also a result of the talent and energy and verve of these individual candidates themselves. It's always it always takes both. So we are delighted. We think that de Blasio's Tale of Two Cities, could be expanded to, it's really a tale of two Americas at this point. And this core problem of our country, namely this inequality, income inequality, racial inequality, environmental inequality, and so on, this is the core characterization, the core problem we face. And so we are excited to have a whole slew of people in office here that actually want to do something about it.
Well, and rightfully so. I guess, the other dynamic that I think the Working Families Party has tapped into so far is a lot of people are feeling, as you know, frustrated with the Democratic Party and the party establishment, and the fact that the party's leaders, from the president to at times even Nancy Pelosi and others, have endorsed policies that historically were Republican in certain ways, whether it's certain cuts to Social Security or whatever. People have been casting around for other ways. There's talk of third parties, but third parties don't get elected. Now, for this reason, there's been excitement about the Working Families Party making a difference, but there's also been the sense now, I know that the Working Families Party is looking to expand aggressively into other states, but there's also been the sense that your model is especially appropriate to New York State and the specifics of the ballot law there, because as I know as a former New Yorker, you can have a new party that endorses the Democratic or the Republican candidate, which is not true in other places. So as you look at exporting this model elsewhere, how are you going to address that issue?
Right. I don't think that's quite right, to be honest. I think what we've done in New York is completely transferable to other places, because even though we do have this slightly different voting system, which I'm happy to explain in a moment, in reality, our power in New York comes from winning Democratic primaries, and that you can do in all 50 states. In other words, we have created an independent political organization, an independent political party, but a lot of our energy electorally goes into winning the Democratic Party primary. We function almost as a party within a party. Just like, the Tea Party functions inside the Republican Party, yanking the Republican Party to the right on a whole set of issues, as you're well aware. Our view is our ideas are actually popular. If we can find good progressives to run, we can help them win, and then they will take office and they can govern. So that is, I think, quite applicable in every state. And that's why we're excited. We're now, Working Families is now in 7 states. And we're smaller in some, bigger in others, but in all of these places, it's the same model. Don't lie to voters. Tell the truth. Recruit candidates who share progressive values, and work like heck to get them elected, and then hold them accountable once they are elected. It's very hard to be a good elected official.
Let me ask you a question. One of the keys, and this has been debated in progressive circles a lot, as you know. One of the keys to the Tea Party's success is that while they registered Republicans, they run Republican candidates, they win primaries and so on. One of the keys to their enormous influence over their party is the implicit and sometimes explicit threat that if their candidate doesn't win, they'll withhold support. And so people are, John Boehner is not a Tea Party Republican, but he sure as heck listens, and he sure looks over his shoulders at them. So,
he dances to their tune. You're totally right. So for us, it's the same thing, right? We have to be willing to, the political scientists call it a threat of exit. You have to be willing to withhold support. You have to be willing sometimes to run your own person against them, and we've done that as well, right? But in the main, the real task is to beat them, is to defeat corporate Democrats and elect progressives. Listen, it's easy to be independent and irrelevant. That's not the goal. That's not your goal. It's not our goal. The task is to be independent and relevant, and that's what we have figured out how to do. Certainly, the Tea Party has figured it out in spades. We might decry them, but they have certainly shown that they know what they're doing in terms of yanking the Republicans and, in a sense, what you said, playing the tune that Boehner has to dance to. So, if over the next several years we're able to do that and yank the Democrats in a progressive, humane direction, which we think is both good policy and good politics, that'll be something to write home about.
Well, let me ask you then. First of all, I'm right with you, and good policy and good politics is almost a mantra of mine because I do think these policies are both. But let's say I wanted to start a working families party in California. Would I be a registered Democrat? Would I be registered Working Families Party?
Yep.
If I am not happy with my congressional candidate and wanted to run a third-party candidate, how would that? Just step me through in maybe 1 minute or 45 seconds how that would work.
We would not particularly promote that you register as working families. Most of the action is often inside the Democratic primary, so most of our members are in fact registered Democrats. So that's fine. We'd probably say, forget it. Don't run for Congress. You're not ready. We would say, let's figure out some city, municipal, and county level races and state legislative races, and then we'll see about whether we are organizationally strong enough to run for Congress. We have to be more patient if we're going to. It has taken the left a long time to get as weak as it is, Richard, and it is not going to get its strength back overnight.
Well, I think that's a terrific answer. So, which states are you expanding into right now?
So we are in Connecticut. It's mostly East Coast with one outlier, but we're looking to expand to the middle of the country soon, and then after that to the south. But all in due course. New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and then we have a long way over to Oregon. We have a very lively Working Families Party operation there, and then people talking to us in at least another dozen states. But of course, it always takes three main things to be able to do this. Stakeholders, community organizations, unions, and environmental organizations, so on, family farmers, some money, and some talent. If you have those three things, you can do this. But without them, you probably cannot. So in each case, we're looking for partners in these states and the resources and the talent to move forward.
Well, I've been promising all along that on this broadcast I will be upfront about my own personal opinions on things. I love the work you're doing. And if other people feel the same way, what can they do to support you guys in your efforts?
The short term, the obvious things are, one, let us know that you're interested so that when we get to your state, we have a list of, dozens, scores, hundreds, thousands of people that are already persuaded this is a good idea. And give some money. Go to the website, go to www.workingfamilies.org and find the little donate button and help out. Become a monthly sustainer, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever one can afford. It all adds up. We have about 4,000 people right now who give us about $10 a month. Get us to 5,000. That will enable us to open up in another state altogether. So those are two things people can do, which we welcome.
And I assume that if people go to that website, workingfamilies.org, they can also find out if they can become active themselves in their own state?
Yeah, if they happen to live somewhere where we're organizing, for sure. They can also just, the website is always a work in progress, but yes, if they send us a little note, we will be able to connect them up with people who are organizing.
Well, thanks so much for being with us, Dan. Keep up the great work, and we hope to have you back.
Thank you so much.
This is RJ Eskow. We'll be back in a minute with more of Take Action News. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 AM We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune in to the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 AM We Act Radio.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something. You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. 31,000 Boeing workers represented by the International Association of Machinists District 751 are eligible to vote today in a contract extension proposal election ordered by IAM International. The highly profitable Boeing company wants to end defined benefit pensions for new hires and freeze the current pensions for IAM members. Boeing is also threatening to move production of the new 777X airplane out of Washington State if their contract extension offer is rejected. So traditional pensions and thousands of jobs could be on the line depending on the outcome of the vote. IAM International sent a letter signed by Union President Tom Buffenbarger to Boeing IAM members that said this offer adds $1 billion to the one rejected in November by District 751 members. Buffenbarger says it's a significant improvement worthy of the membership's consideration. IAM District 751 President Tom Robluski says because of massive takeaways, he's urging his members to reject Boeing's offer. Besides the pension concessions, those takeaways include higher out-of-pocket health care costs and raises totaling just 4% over 8 years. The United Auto Workers Retiree Medical Benefits Trust says its agreement with Fiat to buy out the UAW Trust ownership stake in Chrysler is in the best interests of the Trust's UAW Chrysler members and their families. The $4.3 billion Fiat is paying will go to fund Chrysler UAW retiree health care. The Union Trust, also known as the Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association, or VEBA, was created in 2007. It makes the Union Trust responsible for maintaining retiree health care and offloaded that responsibility from the Detroit 3 automakers. The trust owned 41.5% of Chrysler. Italian unions at Fiat, meanwhile, are concerned about the deal's impact on them. The CGIL Labor Federation in Italy says it's indispensable that Fiat clearly articulate what it intends to do now in Italy. The unions in Italy want Fiat and the government to make guarantees for Fiat's Italian workers in the wake of this deal. Nissan auto plants around the world are union plants, but not in Kenton, Mississippi. A report by labor law professor Lance Campa says Nissan is violating international labor standards at that plant by interfering with worker rights to organize a union. Campa says Nissan uses anti-union intimidation, fear-mongering, and constant psychological pressure against workers in Mississippi. TV monitors throughout the plant run endless loops of anti-union propaganda, and management uses captive audience meetings and one-on-one sessions with workers to instill anti-union fear. Christopher Milton has worked for Nissan in Kenton for 11.5 years. He supports the United Auto Workers Union effort to organize workers in Mississippi.
Fear, intimidation, even racism is part of that plant every day, and we go through a lot of that. Put fear on the workers, we can control them, but they don't never give us a fair chance to say, why we need a union. We need a voice at this plant. And the intimidation and the fear, it really needs to stop.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Packers.
Vikings. We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full. But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Local station WLS broadcasts a radio host who personally attacked a young woman just because he disagreed with her. She told elected officials about her classmates who rely on prescription birth control for their health. The host lobbed 46 personal attacks at her.
She's having so much sex, it's amazing she can still walk. She's having so much sex, she's going broke buying contraceptives and wants us to buy them. It makes her a slut, right? Makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex.
Pick up the phone and tell WLS we don't talk about women like that in Chicago. They should be ashamed. You can reach WLS at 312-984-0890. That's 312-984-0890. Once again, call 312-984-0890 right now and tell WLS there's no place for this kind of indecency to women in Chicago. This community service announcement was paid for by Media Matters for America.
Dire warning. High alert from the state of Utah. Numerous same-sex marriages are occurring every day in our state.
Listen up.
this matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
On Friday afternoon, December 20th, Utah United States Federal District Court Judge Robert Shelby ruled that that state's ban on same-sex marriage was unconstitutional, a violation of the constitutional guarantee of equal protection. By the following Monday afternoon, many hundreds of gay couples had been lawfully wed in Salt Lake City. Utah rushed to ask Judge Shelby to stay, that is, to hold up implementation of his decision until the state's appeals could be decided. Judge Shelby said no. Equality had been denied long enough, and the Federal 10th Circuit Court of Appeals likewise refused to procrastinate on the guarantee of equality. So Utah has rushed to the Supreme Court, where presumably the stay also will be denied. The basis for Utah's appeal is, quote, numerous same-sex marriages are now occurring every day in Utah. Each one is an affront to the interests of the state and its citizens to be able to define marriage through ordinary democratic channels. Memo to Utah. A majority of the people should actually not have the power to vote to deny a minority their constitutionally guaranteed rights. That's why we call them rights.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Carl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
Well, this is RJ Eskow, and we are back on Take Action News. Thanks for joining us. In our first 2 hours, we heard from 7 of our 10 guests, and I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned so far, because I think it's important. You know, we talked a lot about winning electoral races. We talked a lot about the impact of the courts on individual rights, but government is only half the story. That's why I love the conversation with Sally Cohn about lesbian and gay and transgendered rights. It's about transformation at the deepest level. It's about social transformation, cultural transformation, psychological transformation. Government is only one part of who we are as a society and as individuals. The rest changes over time. It changes as a result of economics. It changes as a result of culture, popular culture. A lot of forces go into play. So what I liked about Sally's comments was that while she, like I, celebrates the breakthroughs that have been made in civil rights for gay people, the right to marry, for example, the right to marry is a bitter victory or is a Pyrrhic victory if marriage requires two people to live in constant economic struggle in an unequal society. The right for marriage equality is one at the highest level if we begin to understand that marriage should not be a prison for any couple based on their inability to provide for themselves or their family. We used to live in a country where, for example, one parent could provide a good middle-class living for an entire family. That's the society I grew up in. My father worked, my mother stayed at home. That was a traditional model. In an ideal society, we would still have that ability, but either parent could choose which one wanted to stay home if they preferred to. Instead, we're now in what Elizabeth Warren called in her book the two-parent trap. We're in a situation where middle-class wages have eroded so much that both parents have to work if they're lucky enough to have jobs, and frequently have to have two jobs and go deeply into debt in order to provide what one wage earner used to be able to provide a few short decades ago. That's not right. So I think we have to look at each one of our battles, whether it's marriage equality or the right to serve in the military or electoral representation, in terms of these larger forces. And that's something we're going to keep pushing on Take Action News. So, for example, if marriage becomes an economic trap, then we need to be thinking more broadly than just in terms of extending that right to everyone. And I love what Sally said about victories should change the model. That's what happened in South Africa. The victory of the ANC didn't just mean that one social group prevailed over another. It meant a different kind of society, a more egalitarian society, a more democratic society. How could marriage equality change that equation? Well, if it became also a push for the ability of either parent to support a family, if it became a way to break the gender stereotypes that imprison husbands and wives in heterosexual marriages, in other words, if it allowed gay marriages to become a model for heterosexual couples as well. So these are the kinds of discussions we should also be having. We had the conversation about women's rights, the Affordable Care Act, and the ways in which certain religious groups are trying to not only be allowed to practice their own religion, which I certainly support, but to impose their religious belief on others by making it difficult for others to get insurance. That includes contraception, for example. We should be looking at that struggle as a way to redefine the national conversation about religious freedom and individual freedom. So that's something we're going to keep pushing. Now, we had Eric Kingston on talking about Social Security, the struggle for Social Security in the year to come, as well as in the year that's passed. Here's where I think we've seen one victory in 2013. We've stopped the conversation between Republicans and Democrats about how best to cut Social Security. We've beaten that back, and we've shifted the conversation toward something more positive, which is how to expand Social Security, because Social Security, as some of you may know, is actually much less a secure benefit in this country than it is in other industrialized countries. So we should be having a conversation about how to make those benefits stronger. The retirement system in this country is broken. It's broken for millennials, who one study says will have to work until the age of 73. It's broken for baby boomers who saw their personal assets destroyed by the housing bubble and the banking system. So the conversation about Social Security should also be a conversation about how to renew the social contract and the social safety net. It should also be a contract not about setting generations to battle against each other, which is the way a lot of people, especially the Wall Street funded groups, have tried to pose it, but how to get generations to support each other in a fabric, an interdependent fabric of care and mutual concern. That can be done, but that can only be done if each of these battles is seen in larger context as a battle to reshape society, as a battle to reshape the economy. Then the political debate will follow. We talked with Dan Cantor of the Working Families Party. The reason why I personally am excited about the work of the Working Families Party is that they're pushing the paradigm of what it means to be an electoral politician in this country. They're saying there are political views out there which are enormously popular, there are policies which are enormously popular and right and good for the country that Democrats have been shying away from and Republicans have been trying to destroy. Their strategy is to push the Democrats towards supporting and endorsing these parties. That's good politics, it's good policy, as Dan said. We agree with that. It also strengthens this social contract. It also strengthens this fabric of who we are as a society. So we'll be talking a lot about those social issues in the times to come, in the shows to come, and in our final hour. And we're about to begin that final hour now. First, I believe we'll be taking our floating commercial break, as it's called, and then we'll be back with our first guest from Hour 3 of Take Action News. Thanks so much. Stick with us.
Sergeant Michelle Garcia served meritoriously in Iraq and has the medals to prove it. Soon after leaving the Navy, Lieutenant Chris Scott found a job, a home, and started a family of his own. Corpsman Richard Stokely took the skills he learned in Vietnam and put them to good use as a paramedic. But soon after leaving the military, each of these veterans fell on hard times and faced homelessness. Even after Michelle lost all her savings, even after Chris wasn't able to pay his mortgage, and even after Richard battled alcoholism for years, they each reached out for help when they needed it most. A simple phone call put them in touch with a trained professional from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That call got Michelle a place to stay until she could afford one of her own, put Chris in touch with employment assistance, and found Richard a substance abuse program. These veterans are success stories not only for how they were able to help others while serving their country, but for how they were able to let others help them. If you know of or are a veteran in need, make the call.
When you go on a road trip, you're careful. You follow the signs to arrive at the right place. It's the same online. Read the internet signs along the way, or you may be led astray. For example, look for the .gov at the end of the web address. If it isn't .gov, it isn't the real Social Security website. People are often victimized by misleading advertisers who use terms like Social Security or Medicare to trick the public. These companies charge a fee for free Social Security services. These services include changing your name and getting a new Social Security card. There's no need to pay for services Social Security offers for free. Go to www.socialsecurity.gov. And remember, if it isn't .gov, it isn't Social Security.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians. 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on healthcare while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
And we are back on Take Action News, and our next guest is Ryan Grimm, Washington Bureau Chief of the Huffington Post. Ryan, are you with us?
I'm with you.
All right, great to have you on the show. This is RJ Eskow, and we're back on Take Action News, and at last we meet after all these years of my reading you. So listen, the story I wanted to talk to you about seems like a trivial one, but it won't go away. And I thought maybe you could help me understand why that is. And that's the story of this Duck Dynasty guy, Phil Robertson. And, I figured the story had a shelf life of a half-life of about 48 hours. Some idiot says racist things, gets thrown off the air, and that's it. But of course, unlike some of the other folks, he didn't get thrown off the air. He was suspended and then brought back, and then I thought, well, okay, some racist idiot gets thrown off and brought back, and then it goes away, but yet you wrote about it because the story, there keep being new developments to it, and the latest involves viral media and an organization understood to be progressive. Can you tell us a little bit about Change.org and Nation Builder and the Duck Dynasty story?
Yeah, sure. And first, I think there's that, and I might be in the minority here, but I think there's actually a legitimate argument for leaving the guy on the air. I mean, the show is basically, it's a reality show. It's a documentary. Or it's billed to be a documentary. To me, it'd be like if you did a documentary about a KKK group or a neo-Nazi group, and then found yourself offended and angry at the people because they said racist, white supremacist things. I mean, that you're in those cases you're exploring the culture of the KKK or neo-Nazis. I mean, it's either a reality show or it's not. And if it is, then this is a reality of it, for better or for worse. And you just put it out there. So I think in that sense, there's an argument for it to be left on. But that's not really how the debate shook down. It really shook down progressive versus kind of evangelical, conservative community, where A&E came out and said we're going to suspend the guy, and it looked like they might boot him. And then there was this uprising from evangelical conservatives. First they targeted Cracker Barrel, because Cracker Barrel took out some of the Duck Dynasty paraphernalia that they had in their gift shop, and Cracker Barrel put it back in. From this pressure, but there then became a more organized online effort to harness this energy, in the conservative grassroots, and to point it at A&E to say, look, put this guy back on the air. And for the last several years, as the RNC autopsy has made clear, the right has done a terrible job at developing kind of grassroots technology. The kind of the basic internet tools that allow people to easily engage in activism. You need something that is simple, it's clean, it's elegant, and that is much harder to do than it sounds. And so, the left was far ahead of the right on this, and and two companies in particular led the way on this: Change.org and Nation Builder. And despite the name Change.org, it actually is a for-profit company. So, a lot of people that go on and see the .org probably wouldn't expect that. In the last fall, they announced, or it was actually leaked, that they were going to no longer have a litmus test and require their customers to be progressive. They would take all comers. And so, one problem that they have is that they don't have a ton of conservative signatures. They don't have a lot of names that they can offer to groups like the National Republican Senate Committee, which is one of their clients this year. So something like this can really help. So what happened is they had something like 150 or 200 petitions organically created by. They appeared mostly to be created by evangelical Christians who were saying, he's a man of faith and he's entitled to his practice his religion, and it's unfair to target him for this. The typical kind of persecution complex that a lot of the evangelical movement has, and they Change promoted the petition, put it on their front page, tweeted it out, and it wound up. And Nation Builder had its own website, I Stand With Phil, garnered some 250,000 signatures, and was widely cited as kind of the impetus for A&E taking Phil Robertson back. Now, whatever you think of the controversy itself, it shows how the evangelical movement was able to harness its own power by using progressive tools to accomplish its goal.
So let me just jump in for a second then. I mean, first of all, thanks for your perspective on the issue itself. As someone, I like to say that my Southern Baptist relatives put the cracker in Cracker Barrel, but I think that I think you make a great point about, first of all, the reality show aspect of it, and secondly, I tend to get very uncomfortable with people getting thrown off the air for expressing opinions, but people did find those opinions offensive. But I think the only other thing I'd add, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Change.org was originally nonprofit and progressive and built its strength that way, and then switched to for-profit. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I thought it had always been a B corporation, which is and it still is. This is a for-profit corporation that is required by its charter to not pay dividends to shareholders, and instead it funnels its profits, if it makes them, back into the company itself, which is a slightly different kind of for-profit company than a typical one. You might be right. It may, perhaps in the very early days, it was a nonprofit and switched. It has always been. It had always been consciously progressive. It was.
I think, just to jump in for a second, I think that either way, the perception, just to push the other side of the argument, the perception is that they built their success with progressive talent and progressive support and progressive membership. And now they're flipping and capitalizing on, this is the perception I'm saying, they're flipping and capitalizing on that to build a conservative base on whatever we think of whether Phil.
No, I mean, you're right. The clients of Change.org throughout its tenure, in the beginning were, it was labor, it was a Sierra Club, it was other liberal groups. I mean, there was no question at all that it was funded by and staffed by progressives, and they began to get a little bit uncomfortable with that as they tried to expand their business model, and that's where the reinvention came in the fall of 2012.
So, what's the lesson here? I mean, I guess in a sense, there are two stories. There's a Phil Robertson story, which keeps going on and on with this opinion and that opinion that he expresses. But as my last question to you, I guess, what's the takeaway on the Change.org, the nation builder side of it? Is this just a battle that the progressive movement's going to have to figure out for itself? Is there anything people should be following going forward on this?
I mean, part of that's it. I think one lesson is that this is, money is extremely powerful, and wealth can drive a lot of decisions. And I think, as long as we have this culture of this extreme wealth and inequality, I think we're going to continue to see things like this. I really think that you would need to go back to some extraordinarily high kind of marginal income tax rate at the top to make it so that it was less desirable to get as rich as some people are able to get. Because let's say that you could even implement some system of public campaign financing. You'd still have a system where all of the staffers and members of Congress and senators would know that the corporate interests who are bringing legislation to them are able to hire them at multiples of their current salary when they're out of there. And as long as that is an attractive thing, I think you're gonna see this type of scenario play out. At one point, I think in the 50s, the marginal tax rate was 90% on income over a certain level.
93.
93, yeah. I think you would need to go back to something like that.
Under Dwight D. Eisenhower. All right, Ryan, thanks so much for being with us. I guess the lesson is more equitable society, and beware, because your IT guy probably wants to be Mark Zuckerberg. So,
I think that's right.
Thanks so much for being with us, Ryan, and I hope you'll come back again to Take Action News.
Happy to.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. This is RJ Eskow. We are going to take a break and be right back.
You're listening to WEACT Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
Breast health awareness is critical for all women, particularly African Americans, because we have an increased risk of dying from breast cancer compared to women of other backgrounds. At U of M, I'm doing research here and with women in Ghana to look for an inherited link that makes African and African American women susceptible to a more aggressive type of cancer. Finding this link, I believe, will make new treatments possible. But right now, making sure that you are properly screened is our best protection.
With experts like Dr. Lisa Newman, the University of Michigan Health System is a leader in cancer care. When you call our free Cancer Answer line at 800-865-1125, an oncology nurse will answer any questions you might have about the prevention, screening, and treatment of breast cancer and other forms of cancer. All calls are confidential. Call 800-865-1125 or visit uofmhealth.org/cancer answer line.
We're working to help everyone enjoy longer, healthier lives.
That's the Michigan difference.
As a National Guard or Reserve member, you served your country. Now let VA serve you.
I wouldn't be here today as a successful woman without the help that I received.
Your VA honors your service by providing a wide range of veterans benefits. From home loans to job training, VA benefits can help with some of life's toughest challenges.
What's important about VA benefits is they don't just touch you as an individual. They can touch your parents, maybe your grandparents, your child.
Go to benefits.va.gov/Guard Reserve to learn more, including how to apply online using e-benefits.
I just finished a master's degree recently, and now I'm working on another degree as well. So the military made that all possible. My veterans benefits made that all possible.
No matter what the time is, apply for your benefits. You earn them. VA is ready to help you.
Achieve your next mission. Learn about and apply for your VA benefits today.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. Teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
The true definition of hero. And being a hero took a heroic effort.
Every day we bring to our fans the world of sports. We speak of heroes and heroism, but there are days when sports matter little and heroes matter more. These heroes don't hit walk-off homers or buzzer-beating threes. They simply made a plan for what to do when disaster strikes. You never know when you might need to be the hero, because you never know if today is the day before a natural disaster. Prepare, plan, be a hero. Visit ready.gov.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune into the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio.
This is RJ Eskow, and we are back with Take Action News. Thanks so much for sticking with us. Our next guest is Alexis Goldstein. She is a writer and strategist who specializes in financial and Wall Street issues. She's been affiliated with the Occupy movement, with the other 98%, and she does a great job. Alexis, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, as we've been doing all day today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the year that just ended and the year we're looking forward to. How do you think 2013, I have my own opinions, but how do you think 2013 was as a year for Wall Street reform? How would you grade it on a scale of A to F?
I mean, I think that there's a couple of bright spots, so I wouldn't give it an F, but I think it's probably somewhere in the range of a D. I mean, I think we continue to see too big to jail to be a very real factor. We continue to see a number of fines that have been levied at a number of large financial institutions. I mean, I can kind of go through a sort of checklist month to month, if you like, at some point. But I think that we continue to see that the American people wants to see punishment for the crimes of 2008 and after, and the people in power do not have the appetite to do that. So I think that we're looking at a D.
Well, it's interesting because when I wrote about the year, I said something about green shoots, that it was a grim year, but there were little green shoots here and there. We can talk about whether you see green shoots too, but let's talk about too big to jail for a second. We are... That's certainly been the case. We even had the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, declare that institutions like HSBC, which has been implicated in laundering drug money, more than implicated, I would say,
yeah.
That they that you can't send anybody to jail there for this kind of outrageous crime, which involves colluding with the Mexican drug cartels that have brutally and savagely tortured and murdered perhaps 65,000 people. That you can't do anything about that because it represents a systemic threat to the global economy, were that institution to be endangered. Here's the part I don't understand, even in their thinking, and maybe you can help me with this, because we can't resist their thinking until we understand it better. I don't understand why throwing a couple executives from HSBC into the clink has to inevitably endanger HSBC as an institution.
I think that you're asking absolutely the right question. I think that we have to sort of take a step back and think about who are the people in the circle of influence that are talking to these decision makers, that are talking to the Obama administration, that are talking to the people at the Department of Justice. And that answer to that question is largely people that are either in Wall Street or closely affiliated with Wall Street, that profit from Wall Street. And they have essentially convinced these decision makers that they have a gun to their head, and that if you send even one top-level executive to jail and make them sit in prison for a decade or so, that you will kill finance as we know it. And their favorite example to point to is Enron and Arthur Andersen. And they essentially, brought criminal charges against the firm Arthur Andersen, and Arthur Andersen ceased to exist. And so that's, I suppose, the fear, is that if you throw just one high-ranking, executive in jail, no one will want to be an executive at these big banks. These big banks will, start to crumble, and there will be instability. And that is obviously to the benefit of the people that are at these institutions, and unfortunately those are the people who are in the circles surrounding the people in power. If you look at the economic advisors to President Obama, they largely look the same as the economic advisors to President Clinton, and he oversaw a huge amount of deregulation. So they basically hoodwinked them and made them afraid enough that they believe this lie that if you punish us, the system will be unsafe and the system will be unstable. And you are better off pretending that everything is okay, and maybe you'll get some growth and lower unemployment, and you'll get to continue to elect Democrats to office. And I think you're right. I think if you throw a couple people in jail, the industry is not going to collapse overnight. And to the extent that the industry changes, it will be changing for the better, because a huge amount of their profits right now are coming from basically squeezing pennies out of the already, stretched American sort of lower and middle class. They're squeezing pennies out of people by giving them these horrible bait and switch rates on mortgages. They're squeezing pennies out of people by, not paying them high enough wages, so they have to take out so much debt, and then they're, charging them huge amounts of interest rates on their credit cards. But the people in power believe the lies that the sort of Wall Street lobbyists and their crew are telling them. And so they're just afraid of creating instability.
So they're afraid of course, I got hung up for a minute there when you said it would end the financial system as we know it, trying to figure out what the downside of that outcome would be.
That's right.
But look, so you have a system essentially where the business model is predicated on cheating, I guess was a fair way to put it. Let me give you another example. Jamie Dimon, at least he's no longer being lionized as the president's favorite banker or the best banker on Wall Street or the honest one or the good one. But here's a guy who went before his own investors. There was something called the London Whale, where they lost, you can tell me the final number, $6.2 billion, something like that. on a trade that they attempted to conceal. And Jamie Dimon, the CEO, the very popular CEO of in certain circles at JP Morgan Chase, said to his investors on a phone call that this was nothing more than a tempest in a teapot, when we learned later he already had reports showing that the losses were running into the billions. Now, there is securities law and fraud law, which on at least a superficial reading would suggest that that was a fraudulent statement. Why is it inconceivable to think that Jamie Dimon might be either sued or prosecuted for committing fraud against investors in his bank?
That's also a great question, and I think that there's even a more specific way that Jamie Dimon could be brought and see criminal charges brought against him, which is a very specific law called Sarbanes-Oxley, which came in the wake of Enron and basically insists that the CEO attest that their internal controls are okay, and that they basically have a handle on what is going on at their firm, and they have to sign on the dotted line and swear that that is the case. And so a number of people, including David Dayen, who writes at the New Republic, and also for Salon, have said, listen, it seems to us that Jamie Dimon is guilty of violating Sarbanes-Oxley, because there was this very large report that came out by the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations about the London whale. It was hundreds of pages long, and it documented over and over again the fact that upper-level management all the way up to Dimon knew that these problems were in place, knew that the traders were deliberately lying about these trades, doing things as dodgy as basically cheating regulations and kind of cooking their books, so to speak, so that they didn't have to hold as much capital. And my favorite part of that report that came out was that there was a quant, which is kind of like, there are these ex-physicists who then get jobs on Wall Street and, write complex formulas and try to figure out the price of assets. So they're sort of like nerdy types who have found a way to make a ton of money, and they call them quants. And so there's this quant who figures out a way to game a certain regulation, and he lays it all out in this email, and he's like, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. And upper-level management, they didn't come in and say, whoa, that's not legal, we shouldn't be doing this. Upper-level management came in, and they reamed the guy out because he put it in an email. And they were like, we want to do what you said. And this comes out of phone transcripts that the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation found. So basically, this is the culture of Wall Street. We want you to break the law, but we want you to be careful and don't document it, and don't put it in an email, and don't be so stupid as to leave a paper trail. And so I think you're absolutely asking the right question. I think Jamie Dimon should be facing criminal charges for the London whale, and probably for a host of other things. That is only one thing that they did wrong in the last year. They manipulated electricity markets in California and were actually banned from trading electricity for 6 months by an energy regulator. They had to shut down... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Don't leave out the whistleblower who said that they knew about Bernie Madoff's crimes when they were handling his money for years, and argues that they concealed it, and no one seems to be investigating that. Let me wrap up. We could talk if we start talking about specific bank crimes. We could go on all day, but let me wrap up with a final question to you, Alexis, which is, people are out there. They're frustrated. They see bankers cheating, lying, breaking the law, making a lot of money. They're trying to get by. What can people do? We had the Occupy movement. People feel that it faded. Just in a few seconds, what can people do to fight back against this banking system and try to restore some justice?
So I would suggest two things, or maybe three. And it depends. If you would like to get involved in the political system and push the lever in that sense, it's really important for elected officials to feel heat anytime that they vote with Wall Street. And I try to document any new bill that's coming across on my blog, which is called BecauseFinanceIsBoring.com. And so things like writing op-eds in your local paper actually make a real difference. If you're less interested in the political lever and more interested in just what you can do as an individual, you can move your money. You can take your money out of these institutions, put it in a credit union, put it in a local bank, and make them feel the pain just in a monetary perspective. And then a third thing that you can do is you can look into totally alternative economies. So one example of that is an organization called the Working World, and they're basically an incubator for worker-owned co-ops. So it's almost like they're a venture capitalist that's not evil. And they take money, they loan it to this startup worker-owned co-op, and they don't charge them any interest, and they don't ask for any of their money back until they're profitable. And then
well, I didn't know about that. That sounds terrific. So thanks
great.
so much. I hope you'll come back and talk more about some of these solutions. And finance may be boring, but everybody loves crime, and this is a crime story too. So, Alexis Goldstein, thanks so much for coming and talking with us on We Act Radio.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back. This is RJ Eskow. We'll be right back with more of Take Action News.
For me, guns are for hunting and protecting my family. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'll fight to protect it. But with rights come responsibilities. That's why I support comprehensive background checks, so criminals and the dangerously mentally ill can't buy guns. That protects my rights and my family.
Tell Congress, don't protect criminals. Vote to protect gun rights and our families with comprehensive background checks. Demand action now.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Shuster, your host of Take Action News. On our show, we talk government, politics, and what you can do to have an impact. We're nonpartisan, report like hell, and let the chips fall where they may. We feature segments like social media, activists of the week, and the latest news affecting our communities. So join us every Saturday and make a difference. Yes, you and I, we can do this. That's Take Action News on the air, online, and at your podcast convenience on iTunes each week on the We Act Radio Network.
Say you want to go to college. Yay! A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East. Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org. or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
100% success rate in modifying free consultation.
Does this sound familiar? If you're in need of assistance with your mortgage, be careful where you turn for help. Loan modification scammers will offer deals too good to be true. Learn the signs so your life won't be turned upside down. Know it, avoid it, report it. For more information or to report a scam, call 1-888-9950 or visit HUD.gov/preventloanscams.
Our children are exposed to violence every day, in their neighborhoods, in their schools, even in their own homes. Exposure to violence can have a devastating and lifelong impact. Through community action and leadership at the national level, we're identifying the children who need our help. I'm Attorney General Eric Holder, and I'm asking those of you who have a role in a child's life to take action. Through your attention and early intervention, we can help children in need to heal, to thrive. Together, we can change their lives and their futures.
Join the Justice Department in defending childhood.
And we are back on Take Action News. Our next guest is Robert Borisage. Bob Borisage is the co-director of the Campaign for America's Future, an organization which, in the spirit of full disclosure, I will let you know, it provides me with a fellowship and a home, so and they do great work. Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure. How's your voice holding up?
You know, after 3 hours, remarkably well. Of course, I probably won't speak the rest of the day, which will make my wife happy, but thanks for coming on. And I guess the question I wanted to ask you as we wrap up after these 3 hours, we've heard about a lot of issues, we've heard a lot of dimensions of the problem. What do you think will be the defining debate or debates of the coming year? As you know, it's obviously going to end with an election, a congressional election. What are the battles or the debates we should be thinking about that are going to shape 2014, in your opinion?
Well, the first big question is whether Congress does anything at all. It has to presumably lift the debt ceiling and keep the government open. I think Republicans are committed to that minimum. That requires passing a budget. But the first big battle is unemployment insurance. Will it renew jobless benefits for the millions of people who will lose them if they're not renewed? At this point, that's very unclear. That'll be the first battle out of the box. That will be followed by, I think, major skirmishing. It's not clear whether any of these come to a vote in the House on immigration reform and on raising the minimum wage. And I think through that process, you're going to see whether or not Republicans have decided that they will run, even though they are standing in the way of things that are very popular with the American people. Throughout the year, Republicans will want this to be a debate about Obamacare and the cost of health care, and will, they will blame every cent of insurance company price increases and customer gouging on Obama and the Obama health care plan. And then we'll head into the election, in which the issues will be very different. I think the major issue in the election at the end of the day will be what the voters are concerned about, which is an economy that doesn't work for working people. And the question will be, who are they going to blame for that? I think there will be a very strong attitude about throwing all the bums out in both parties. And so I think incumbents generally will be weaker than normal. I think there will be a lot of disillusion, and so you can imagine a low vote turnout. And I think the question for Democrats, for progressives, or for that matter, for Republicans, will be who can credibly say to the American people they have a clue about how to get this economy on better track, and are prepared to fight for that.
Well, the challenge the Republicans will face is that their ideas are nonsensical. The challenge that the Democrats will face is that the public perception is that they've been in charge. So the public perception is likely to be, won't we get more of the same? So what can Democrats or progressives do or say to push a different kind of an agenda that might plausibly change things, and what should people be pushing their Democratic leaders to be saying that might change that equation a little bit?
Well, I think you've got that right. Republicans will be running against the economy that people do not like, and espousing a set of policies that people do not believe in. Democrats will be tempted, I think, led by the White House, to argue that the economy is on the right track and that it's growing and creating jobs, and give it time. If they do that, I think that's close to suicidal. The public rightfully sees this as an economy that is benefiting the very few, and in which most families are struggling simply to stay afloat. So the first question for Democrats, and certainly for progressives, is to be clear that this is not an economy that they are satisfied with. And then the second question, and that part of its problems are that Republicans have consistently stood in the way. in the way of investing in infrastructure and putting people back up to work, in the way of spending some money on school teachers and rehiring cops, et cetera, at the state and local level, in the way of raising the minimum wage and getting millions of people out of the shadows with immigration reform. I think there's an agenda there that's very clear about what's gone on in the past that shows Republicans are, part of the problem, a big part of the problem of this economy. But the big question for Democrats will be, where do they go on the trade deals? The president seems intent on putting trade accords before the Congress. They are unpopular and should be. And so are Democrats going to line up with the president, or are they going to lead the effort to say we need a very different way of relating to the world than one defined by multinationals that use these trade accords to drive down wages here and hide profits and avoid taxes abroad?
Well, Bob, we only have 30 seconds left, so I guess I would say in conclusion that I assume you would agree with me that the other thing Democrats have to be aggressive about is explaining what they would do about jobs and creating jobs if they weren't being hamstrung by these Republicans.
Exactly. I'm with you on that, and that's not going to be easy because the question is, who's credible in that if you haven't been fighting for it all along?
All right. Well, I think that that's a good summary of the battleground, and I think that leaves the rest of us obligated to push the Democrats to make that case more strongly. And if they want to know more about Campaign for America's Future, I think they can go to, in fact, I know they can go to ourfuture.org, OURFUTURE.org, to learn more about your work, my work, and the work of the organization as a whole. So, Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
And rest that golden throat.
Thank you. All right, this is Richard Eskow, and you've listened to our first broadcast as host of Take Action News. I guess in conclusion, and I'm being told that I should identify myself as RJ. I go by both names. So this is RJ Eskow telling you, in the words of Bob Dylan, you can call me RJ, you can call me Ray, you can call me anything. It doesn't matter what you say. We still have a big battle on our hands in the year to come. The Republicans are a lost cause to convince the Democrats to fight on the issues that people care about: jobs, an end to oppressive trade, and a society that works for everyone. So we'll be doing that. We hope you'll join with us on Take Action News and fighting those battles. This is RJ Eskow. Thank you for listening.
I'm Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico. Last year, my state became the 12th state to allow medical use of marijuana by patients who are seriously ill. Some people were surprised that a Republican governor supports medical marijuana, but I'm hardly alone. Groups like the American College of Physicians, American Nurses Association, and American Public Health Association have all acknowledged the medical value of marijuana. New research about medical marijuana is coming out almost every day, showing remarkable potential in all sorts of serious conditions, including cancer, AIDS, and chronic pain. But some in government still want to put politics and ideology ahead of public health. To learn more about medical marijuana and what you can do to help, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thanks.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.